Personal rights *****. Personal rights. A presidential address delivered to the 41st annual meeting of the Personal Rights Association, on the 6th of June, 1913, by Mrs. Mona Caird. London, the Personal Rights Association, 11, Abbeville Road, London, S.W. Price, 1 penny. Printed for the Personal Rights Association, by the Tokyo Printing Company, Reading and London. Mrs. Mona Caird on personal rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I used to feel some impatience with public speakers who spent half their speech in explaining how it was they had committed the indiscretion of making it, and how much more suitable for the post somebody else would have been. Those gentlemen now have my profoundest sympathy. I feel that I ought to spend not half, but my whole speech, in explaining why I have the temerity to address you tonight on this familiar subject, seeing that I never do speak in public, and that my feelings about taking the chair are very much like they would be about taking a cold plunge in the Atlantic in early spring. However, I can't get rid of my deficiencies by enumerating them, so I must just throw myself on your mercy, asking you to regard this venture as a tribute of admiration and gratitude to our President and his supporters who have made so magnificent a defense of the cause for so many thankless years. Also, I have felt moved to accept the honor on account of the scarcity of wholehearted champions, especially, I regret to hear, among the sex, which has always been deprived of personal rights. Perhaps that is just why they are lacking in respect for them. And what a warning this is. The spirit of liberty, it would appear, can be starved to death. Society, having done its foolish best to destroy that spirit in half its members, expects the other half to retain it unimpaired, an obvious impossibility. For interaction of influence is incessant and universal between the two sexes. The career of women having depended not on right, but on favor, they have learnt to care little for an abstract idea which has no bearing on their lives. Only the exceptional mind cares for that. But similar conditions would assuredly produce the same result in men. And we are on our rapid way to similar conditions. Now, in a vast subject like this, which really touches the heart of everything that is vital and valuable in life, it is impossible, in 25 minutes to deal with it in any detail, and I propose tonight simply to dwell upon the perils with which we are all threatened in consequence of the present trend of sentiment. For we have to try and make these perils obvious to the hearts, as well as to the minds of our contemporaries, if there is to be any hope of checking the present downward tendencies. It is of little use merely stating that it is perilous to try to purchase social benefits at the expense of individuals. To the majority, that seems the safest thing in the world, and, strange to say, the most just. The ancient idea of vicarious sacrifice is as rampant today as it was when the groves of ancient temples echoed with the cries of human victims, burnt on the altars, for the appeasement of the gods and the good of the community. The idea of numbers enters largely into the popular idea of right and wrong, what I call arithmetical morality. Because 100 is 10 times more than 10, it is assumed that 10 persons may justly be sacrificed for the sake of the 100. But that is to confuse mere non-sentient signs with living conscious beings, surely a strangely stupid proceeding. It is this deeply rooted idea which we have to combat. First of all, then, it must be noted that, as a rule, the less liberty people enjoy, the less they value or respect it. The preoccupation will be not with liberty, but with the best means of getting on without it. And the best way of doing that will be, or will seem to be, to force your own views as much as possible upon your neighbors, otherwise they will force theirs upon you. Mutually lacking in respect for liberty, there will be as many good reasons for attacking it in others as you have theories to enforce. And the same for them. The situation must obviously end in a stupendous tyranny of some kind, whether of king or oligarchy or state, and that of the state, being practically invulnerable, is the worst of all. I am far from thinking that the motive for aggression would always be self-interest. It would be less dangerous if it were. We all know the deadly tyranny of the thoroughly well-meaning person, the highly moral person, for instance, who calls out for medieval forms of punishment for especially reprobated crimes. As some philosopher said, He must be an extraordinarily good man before he can safely be guided by his conscience. I go farther, and say, the extraordinarily good man must be trained for a lifetime by the Personal Rights Association before he can trust his conscience. And even then he had better not. Of all human attributes, conscience, when backed by power over others, seems to be the most dangerous. Think what martyr fires it has lighted, what torture chambers it has furnished and kept busy. If we had only self-interest to deal with, we should not be troubled with the present ardent desire of increasing numbers of people, to further the interests of society, of morals, medicine, science, even what are called the true interests of the individual himself, by progressive outrage against him. It is this eternal, good motive, that makes our reformers as irresistible as a swarm of locusts, and as destructive. The bravest of us flinch before virtue on the war-path. Before they have done, our philanthropic locusts will have eaten off every green blade and leaf of human initiative, and will leave the society which they so yearn to serve barren and blight-stricken, perhaps for centuries to come. Of what value to any one is such a society? What in fact exists but individuals? And mark, there is no retracing our steps if we go too far in this direction. We are always assured that there would be a reaction against a too great restriction of the human spirit. But that is true only so long as the restriction is more or less a novelty, and is not too great. Directly it becomes really extreme, there is no reaction. We can see this in the innumerable nations of antiquity and of today, which have remained stagnant for hundreds and hundreds of years. Lack of human rights tends progressively to stifle the spirit that would demand or respect them. Even in England, whose history is that of the struggle for liberty, we have seen how, in women, that spirit has been weakened. How then are we to hope, after a too deep descent to Avernus, for a return towards the light and inspiration of freedom? It is expecting a result without a cause, or rather in the teeth of one. Like Xerxes, stupidly confident, we burn our boats behind us. Or, more accurately, nature burns them for us. She seems to say, very well, if you don't want to give scope to original minds, you have only to make your social conditions accordingly, subordinate your individual ruthlessly to what you call the common good, and original minds will never trouble you again. Not only will your organization suppress them, but it will gradually destroy your power even to produce them. That will save them an immensity of trouble, and prevent all hitches in your boring routine. If that's what you want, it is easily yours. But our reformers don't exactly want that. They like to have it both ways. They want a subservient, state-ridden community of highly individualized human beings, who, like the inmates of Barry's Home for Geniuses, would initiate punctually and spontaneously to order, in the approved direction, of course. No fantastic unexpected nonsense would be tolerated for a moment. The old pathetic story of Midas, whose wish, granted by the gods, that everything he touched should turn to gold, seems vaguely symbolic of this eager desire to turn living, initiating individuals into subservient parts of a social whole. It is possible to have a prayer too completely answered, as poor Midas found, when his best cook's masterpieces became hard yellow metal under his teeth, till he starved amidst fabulous riches, while his heart was finally broken when his little daughter, running in to bid him good morning, was changed into a priceless golden statue. Like Midas, our reformers are short-sighted. Their eyes are so fixed on the golden age that they want to bring about for humanity, that they forget that they may be killing humanity in the process, the very spring and life essence of the human material which they, meddling little amateur deities, are trying so hard to make after their own image. Our philanthropists will find when too late, that they have turned all that is living into hard, precious, valueless gold, the gold of a mechanical social order, if the gods are cruel enough to grant their foolish prayers. I do not say that the day of awakening would never come. To China and Japan, for instance, it has at last come, through outside not internal causes, be it noted. But think of the spellbound, horrible ages of nightmare-ridden sleep that went before. Once upon a time in old Japan, a man was not allowed to give his grandchild a doll measuring more than certain carefully prescribed dimensions. The paternal powers deemed moderation in doles to be desirable, and so curbed undue enthusiasm in grandparents by solemn legislative measures. It is claimed by its admirers that the system, whose nature we can gauge from this instance, worked admirably. Probably it did. So does a regularly wound clock. As a matter of fact, the better the preposterous system worked, the more fatally it would strangle its victims. Now it is this fact which we all have to try to make clear to our opponents. Humanity growing fat and prosperous on banquets of immolated individuals would be about as disastrous a condition as one could well imagine. As a matter of fact, humanity, a mere abstract term used for convenience of speech, has been endowed by careless thinkers with a sort of divine self-existence. And like most divine beings, this new deity demands sacrifices. For instance, the recent medical proposal to dissect criminals alive in the interests of the community, another collective term fetish, reveals, in typical form, the line of sentiment, I can scarcely call it thought, against which we have to contend. I do not say that the majority would not still be shocked at this proposal, but that is simply because it has not yet become familiar. Once it does become familiar, the horror will die away. Think of the everyday atrocities which have the public sanction, and then, as there is no principle of personal rights to stand between the proposed victim and the eager experimenter, the latter will be allowed to take his long-coveted prize. He is already permitted to take innocent, sentient creatures, on the plea of the public good, and it is only carrying out the theory to its logical conclusion, to take guilty ones for the same purpose. And on the same plea, like the lie, an ever-present help in time of trouble, the ordinary citizen will probably follow, in due course. It is a question of time and sentiment, not of principle. Now is it quite impossible to awaken the public to the awful and innumerable dangers which confront us all, as soon as the protection of personal rights is withdrawn? Will not even this threat of human vivisection reveal our utter defenselessness? Can we not persuade our contemporaries to ask themselves if, for instance, the apostles of eugenics have shrunk from any measure, however outrageous, which they thought promised the desired results? Provided the end is gained, the individual must pay the price. It seems to be thought unworthy of him to object. Thus he is placed at the mercy of every wind and tide of popular opinion, or, what is worse, at the mercy of the views of experts, who naturally tend to think all things lawful which benefit their particular branch of knowledge. If vaccination is approved of, vaccinated the individual must be. If science demands human vivisection, he must submit even to that outrage. On what principle, except that of personal rights, can the demand be refused? The outrage might result in valuable knowledge. Again, if society is obsessed by a crude and unproved theory of heredity, how are we to resist interference with our marriages, or being treated as hysterical, or feeble-minded, or degenerate, or insane? Genius and originality generally seem pathological to the majority, and what the end will be of this sort of old Japanese system, considering its very vigorous beginning, is not cheering to prophesy. Unless its very absurdity causes a reaction before it is too late, we shall find ourselves in the current of an evolution backwards to the savage state, in which the individual is very like that foolish and much overrated insect, the bee, hopelessly submerged in the social hive. As originality is usually lodged in a peculiarly sensitive organism, delicately responsive to conditions, it would tend to atrophy, as plants do whose leaves and buds are persistently nipped off. No living thing can stand the process long. It is one of the shallowest of popular fallacies that genius always overcomes obstacles. It depends on the obstacles and the kind of genius, or, more accurately, on the ordinary qualities with which the genius happens to be accompanied. In itself, genius is a handicap, not an aid, to outward success. Now in the degenerating society, which we are considering, its path of descent is easy to trace. Observe the increasing tragedy of the situation. As the strata of what I call hive heredity accumulate, there is always a deeper and deeper soil of hive instinct out of which each new generation has to spring. Is it not progressively unlikely, therefore, that sports would appear? And if they did appear, at lengthening intervals, would they not be handicapped by a strong herd instinct, impregnably seated in that reservoir of inborn impulse that we now call the subconscious? The more one dwells on this principle of ours, the more its essential truth and beauty and sanity is revealed. It is so gloriously universal in its scope. Just in so far as man or animal can enjoy rights or suffer wrongs, just so far we demand for him protection. We deem it absurd and irrelevant to ask questions as to his faith or his morals, or his importance, as to the number of his legs, or the nature of his covering. It is obviously enough that he can feel. We do not say, he has no friends, let us make him suffer for our good. We say, he is in our hands, therefore we are his guardians to a man and woman. And as a result of this loyalty to the least of our brethren, we should find, if we could but make it universal, that we had made impregnable our one line of defense against innumerable dangers and evils, our Chautauqua lines, we might call them, of inalienable personal rights. And in strengthening these for the protection of the humblest as well as the greatest of our brethren, we render increasingly possible all that makes life interesting, dramatic, and truly worth the living, all adventures of the human spirit. A vista of possibilities is thus opened which promises an enrichment in all the relations of life, an enlargement of the range of consciousness, and therefore of progress, to which we can actually set no limits. Compare this with the unspeakable boredom of the hurdy-gurdy existence of a state-dominated community. Those who have been used all their lives to the atmosphere of civilization often do not realize how easily it can be destroyed. The curious change that comes over educated persons who have lived long in the backwoods gives a hint of my meaning. As a rule, the man, or woman, has in some way dwindled. The consciousness and comprehension have narrowed, the perceptions are poorer, slower, less human. The companioning element has almost gone, and one feels that the common meeting ground of civilized humanity has shriveled almost to nothing. And so one can but realize that a certain fine flower of the human spirit, which might be still further glorified and developed, can, on the other hand, be swiftly annihilated. Humanity, so to speak, loses its level, like a traveler who has mistaken his way, and walks downhill only to have to come up again, or else to resign himself to remaining on the plains, he who had set out for the mountains. Now, what if this be the reason that civilizations blossom only to decay? I utterly disbelieve in the facile and misleading analogy of the social organism. Societies do indeed change, but they do not go through an exactly repeated series of stages after the fashion of organisms. It is quite unproved that there is any inherent principle of decay. What, in fact, is a principle of decay? Now, it seems probable that one cause of decay is just this perpetual losing of level. Like Penelope, humanity has always kept on undoing its own work, and beginning all over again. And so our civilizations naturally wither. And is this not, mainly, because we have never yet learnt a true love of liberty? Suppose for a moment, a universal respect for it such as I have just been imagining, a society wherein there was a real passion for protecting and liberating and giving scope to the individual impulse and inspiration. Is it not almost certain that this incessant loss of level, this destruction of previous achievement would be avoided? And if it were, what is to prevent our traveler reaching the mountains he set out for? The Personal Rights Association. Founded the 14th of March, 1871. Offices, 11, Abbeville Road, London, S.W. President, Mr. Franklin Tharmason, J.P., ex-MP Honourable Secretary and Treasurer, Mr. J. H. Levi. Assistant Secretary, Mrs. Lorenza Garreau. Bankers, Pars Bank, Charing Cross Branch, Limited. Object of the Association. The object of the Association is to uphold the principle of the perfect equality of all persons before the law in the exercise and enjoyment of their individual liberty within the widest practicable limits. It would maintain government just so far as, but no farther than, is necessary for the maintenance of the largest freedom, and, in applying this, would have equal regard to the liberty of all citizens. If you wish to join in this work, send a subscription to the Treasurer of the Association, at the above address, and the individualist and a copy of each of the pamphlets and leaflets issued by the association will be sent to you, as issued, by post. Do not miss the opportunity of cooperating in this work, the breaking of the chains of oppression and the liberation of all the forces which work for happiness and human dignity. Checks and postal orders should be crossed Pars Bank, Charing Cross Branch. Further information with regard to the association may be obtained from Mrs. Lorenza Garreau, Assistant Secretary. Transcriber's notes page 6 changed, the old pathetic story of Midas to the old pathetic story of Midas. Asterisk 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 end of the Project Gutenberg ebook personal rights asterisk 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 updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works. So the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission, and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg electronic works, to protect the Project Gutenberg concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg license available with this file, or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Electronic Works 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark or copyright agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg electronic work, and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation, or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States, and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, We hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing, or creating derivative works based on this work, or any other Project Gutenberg work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away, or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook, or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7, or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work, or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links, or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary, or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII, or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg website at www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII, or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg license, as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg electronic works, provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg works, calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about Donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing or by email within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f. 1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe, and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty, or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg work. And C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's EIN, or Federal Tax Identification Number, is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84116, 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form, accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform, and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg Electronic Works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.